Good morning. Hello, my name's Carol Walford. I'm Chief Clinical Officer at Hospice UK, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to this session. We're going to be looking at transition and change. We're going to be talking about an unexpected generation and how we support the move into adult life and adult services for these people. I'm really delighted to have you with us this morning. We've got an amazing crew who've come together to put the session together for you. And right at the start, I wanted to talk to you about something that's coming later in the session. The OU have been working hard with the Royal College of Nursing, with Together for Short Lives, with the AdversiTeam, and also Hospice UK. And we do have a third edition of the Talking About Sex and Sexuality and Relationships document. If you want to know further information about this, it's being launched today. This is the first time that we've had the third edition. We have copies of the second edition too, so we won't disappoint you if you can't get hold of one of the new ones. And if you want more information about this fantastic document, the updated version has got more information about LGBT and Q in it. It's got more information around law. It's got quite a lot of input from the AdversiTeam, and you'll hear more from the AdversiTeam as we progress through this morning's session. More information on this will be available at the stand. The OU stand is next to the Together for Short Lives stand in the exhibition. So that's the advertisement, and I'm delighted to be able to launch this today. Before we get to talking about that work and what went into that work, I'm delighted to open the session with Alison Cook. Alison is an honorary research fellow at the OU. We're sending our love and thoughts to Sarah Earle, who's unable to be with us today. We've also got Carrie James talking to us about ECHO and the Transitions project that we're launching, which is also connected to this work. And finally, but by no means least, I'm really delighted to welcome Maddie Blackburn, Chair of the Open University Sexuality Alliance. Lucy Watts, who's the chair of AdversiTeam, and Leah Booth, her deputy chair, are also with us, and we're delighted to welcome them. And of course, Molly Dog. If you don't know Molly Dog, we welcome Molly Dog as well, who has an honorary mention in our programme this year. I'm aware that time is precious for this subject, and so I'm going to start by handing straight over to Alison. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. So, we're looking initially at the current landscape and the policy landscape for transition. The world has changed for children who've got life-limiting and life-threatening conditions. And we've moved from a situation where there was a very small minority of children that we didn't really know a lot about to an area where we've got a lot more research. And today we know that there are almost 50,000 children with life-limiting, life-threatening conditions and complex needs, and over 50,000 young adults in the country with these conditions. The challenge for us in working with children who move into adulthood is that the adult sector isn't really prepared for them. And to a certain extent, the children's sector still see them as children, even though quite often they're reaching the age of 18, 19, 20, and onwards from there. One of the real key issues for us within the Open University Sexuality Alliance is recognising the needs for the young people to be seen as sexual beings, and that's something that we're going to talk to you about today. As I say, the incident of children with life-threatening and life-limiting conditions is increasing, partly due to changes in medication and treatments that are available for them, and partly due to an increased recognition that they are out there. The issue for a lot of us is that this isn't necessarily reflected in budgetary support, and it's always a challenge to raise money to be able to care for these children, particularly because a lot of them have very complex needs and they have increasingly expensive packages of care. In 2015, a report showed that there was a 25% increase in children with life-threatening conditions in Scotland, and that was within just a 4-year period. There have been a lot of policies and processes and procedures and a lot of reports around children with life-threatening conditions moving into transition. This is just a few of them, but in fact, since this slide was created, there have been an awful lot more. I'm just going to highlight the Talking About Sex, Sexuality, Relationships one, which is the one we've launched today, the third edition. And if you do want more information about it, please come over and speak to us on the stand after the session. I'm now going to hand you over to Dr Maddie Blackburn, who will be following on. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Maddie, and delighted to see you in the audience today. I'm just actually going to touch on very briefly here a bit about my own PhD sexuality research, which was entitled Sexuality, Relationships and Relationship Opportunities in People with Life-Limiting Conditions and Life-Threatening Conditions. And actually there were several hugely important themes which actually link to the important work that the Open University Sexuality Alliance has been engaged in over the last 5 years. And you've met many of the members of the AdversiTeam, including Carol, on the stage today, and several of you are in the audience. And without you, we couldn't do this work. But the PhD actually talks to what we're actually doing now. And the themes that really emerged from that piece of work were not only the importance of sexuality, and you'll see some of those touched upon in Lucy and Leah's presentations, the significance of disability, that constant reminder about the uncertainty along the life course. And many of the 13 young adults I interviewed and 10 parents and 10 health and social care professionals repeatedly told me that because they had been advised, the young person or the parent, and even the professionals, X would not live or reach until adulthood. Forget sexuality, it wasn't really going to apply. That is an absolute nonsense, as Alison has highlighted in the earlier slides, that the young people, we are so pleased to see, are living longer, have high quality needs, but are passionate about having their sexual identity recognised. And then, of course, that constant reminder of death, dying, and end of life, when life should be fun and living life to the fullest for as long as that may be. So, just very briefly, some recommendations, and you see yet another plug for the Talking About Sex on the stands. One of the things which we will pick up on later is that importance of lifelong information and access to information about sex, sexuality. Sex education is for life, not just for kids in this particular population. And both young people and their carers in the research and actually in the work we're doing currently and is ongoing, constantly reminders that it doesn't stop at 18. For many, it may start those questions at 18 plus going on throughout their lives. The importance of having dedicated services through that important transition period into adulthood, not children's services, but recognise the holistic needs, and that includes information and advice about sexuality. And many of you are working in the hospice sector or in hospitals throughout the world in this audience today. And actually, what are the governance and policy arrangements that are available to support you in giving any necessary advice to young people with life-limiting conditions? That's just a repeat of a very busy slide, but actually supports the importance of making sure that we disseminate the information, and that's what we're doing now through the guidance, online education resources, future research, and actually that we are supporting first and foremost the young people with life-limiting conditions, their parents, their carers, their advocates, all the health, social care and educational professionals who actually support young people with life-limiting conditions in their everyday lives. And actually policymakers. We know we're in purdah, but it doesn't stop. So finally in this section, one of the key themes that really emerged over above all the recommendations, but this is a population who have very different chronological and physiological stages, often compounded by the life-limiting, life-threatening conditions. They are in a liminal group, I describe them, falling between children's and adult services, quite often forgotten, and their sexuality is often ignored. And that should not be the case. And we see today through the work and champions like Lucy and Leah that this must not be the case. And I'm now going to hand over to Carrie, who's going to tell you about the ECHO project.
Just going back one slide, I know this was 5 years ago, but when you engage with young people and you talk to them about their needs and if we're meeting their needs, quite often they will say there are still gaps in the services that we provide. So I think although we're making quite a lot of headway in transition, there's still a lot of room for improvement. Okay. So thinking about transition and thinking about the obstacles and challenges that we face is how we tackle that and how we move forward that's important. Keeping things simple, looking at quick wins, seeing how we can completely radicalise and transform care. So, as we've mentioned throughout this presentation so far, we know we've got a challenge. We know the landscape of care and the demographic that we're serving is also changing. It's very difficult to work with young people with multiple complexities in a holistic way, but we can do that. And how do we do that? And how do we work collaboratively to make that happen? As Maddie's touched on, we need to balance finance, need, demand, and how we do that is really important as we move forward. What we know currently is that families and carers provide a lot of care for the population we're talking about today. They might receive a lot more support within their own homes rather than in service provision provided within hospice. We need to look at innovative solutions, how we move this support forward for them. We need to engage with communities, and we need to look at new service delivery models, and that's what we're trying to look at within Hospice UK currently. So Hospice UK would like to use Project ECHO for this piece of work, and funding has been received for a 3-year project to drive this forward. ECHO, for those of you who don't know, stands for Extension of Community Healthcare Outcomes. Project ECHO is a collaborative approach to education and care management that empowers clinicians to share information and create knowledge networks. We use that by using technology, case-based learning, best practice, and using a database to monitor health outcomes. It's supported by Zoom technology. Those of you who haven't been to see our stand, come and have a chat with the team and we'll talk you through how this process works. On the right here, we've got an example of a hub set up. So you've got your MDT meeting there, linking in with clinicians around the regional network or wherever it is you want to engage with. Project ECHO is very different to telemedicine. I know there's a lot of confusion between the two, but telemedicine is a one-to-one approach, providing direct care to a patient, whereas ECHO is the one-to-many collaborative knowledge network approach. A little bit more about the networks here. So the networks are all different. The networks and hub sites themselves establish their own curriculum of learning. For the purpose of this project, we wanted people to share a special interest in transition. We wanted to look at an educational model and an ongoing network of support. So benefits of ECHO. We know that examples prior to the transition setup, that we can extend our reach, that we can reduce disparity, reduce the strain on resources. It can really free up clinicians' time to really make change and deliver care in the way that they want to deliver it. We know it can improve professional satisfaction, reduce variations in care, which is really important when we're talking from a transition perspective because it's multiple complexities, and it can give us value-based healthcare as well. Hospice UK's approach to ECHO for the purposes of transition is to train 3 hub organisations across the UK for them to establish their own transition network. So we have Yorkshire and Humber Children's Palliative Care Network, Keach Hospice and Solent NHS Foundation Trust for immersion training in December. We're going to support the development of knowledge networks. We're going to engage a national transition community of practice. So if you're interested in that, please drop me a line. We're going to develop an online resource and we're going to evaluate the programme and complete guidance, obviously engaging with young people all along the way. These are our contact details for the team if you're interested in Project Echo, and we'll open up to questions now. Thank you.
Should we save them for the end? Okay, we'll save them for the end. Let's move on. Oh, Maddie.
Carol, I'm just a couple, 2 or 3 slides. Dr. Sarah sadly can't be with us today, but actually fundamental to the work is how it all came together. And basically, the Open University Sexuality Alliance was formed about 5 years ago. And we've been engaged in 4 projects, one of which was the guidance that's already been mentioned so many times already, a project on emotional well-being and sexuality, which is being written up as we speak. My PhD we've already mentioned, and last but not least, the online education resources that Lucy and Leah very shortly will be discussing and you will be seeing on screen. One of the things that's fundamental, and I'm inspired by Mark's keynote address yesterday, where he actually talked about that vital role of patient-public involvement or inclusion of young people or whoever in the work. And actually, this is something that's evolved for us as a team, and has provided challenges and merits both for people like Leah and Lucy, and indeed ourselves. But the tenet of our work is really the inclusivity, and that people like Leah, Lucy, Junior, and others you'll see on the films drive our work. People like Alison, Carol, and myself, and Philippa and Lizzie in the audience, we're just the gophers to try and enable it to happen. But the real work, which is all evidence-based, it's based on research, but actually it is driven by the champions like Leah and Lucy, and of course Molly Dog, I can't forget, and Kate, who's in the audience. Very briefly, there's some literature. The slides will be shared with you on the importance of actually inclusive research, but recognizing, as I said in one of my PhD slides, that we are grappling not only with an often regarded taboo subject like sexuality, but disability, end of life, and the uncertainty along that life course for a population who've often been told repeatedly, and their families, they're going to die, so sex doesn't matter. Forget that, as you will hear shortly. So flick through that, you've heard about that. Now, an important section here is the Open University's Let's Talk About Sex, Intimacy, Relationships with a Life-Limiting, Life-Threatening Conditions, sponsored by Together for Short Lives and the Open University. And I'm actually going to begin with that.
I'm Lucy, I'm from Essex, and I have a rare form of mitochondrial disease which has caused various complex medical needs and multiple organ failure, and I live at home with my mum, my sister and my assistant's dog Molly.
Hi, my name is Amy. I'm from Taunton in Somerset. My disability causes severe muscular spasms, excessive fatigue and pain.
Sex education. So, did you get any sex education at school?
No, I don't really think many disabled people necessarily tend to get access to sex education. They tend to get just sort of pushed on the side a little bit. Seems like all my peers did, but I didn't.
No, nor did I. I didn't get any sex education. I think you got the basic period talk at school when you're in primary school, but apart from that I was kind of kept out, and then I became too ill to go to school. The community services never really picked up kind of the sex education side of things. Everything I've learned on the internet, from my sister, from other people.
I was going to say, so where do you learn about sex if you don't have that sex education?
But also, it's where do you learn about the disability-specific sex education? Because the broad principles you can understand the medical stuff, but how is it relevant to me? I don't find there's that much information that relates to me as a person and my disability and how that affects, what sex education I need. I think people just put us in a box, we're asexual, not interested, not worthy, not valuable, not desirable. And I think having us as part of it sends a message to other people, but it also sends a message to us that we are part of society. You're constantly fighting for rights and fighting for services and fighting for support. You start to internalise that you're not worthy, and then suddenly you're in a sex education class where everyone's the same. You might have some disability-specific bits that are more relevant for you and bits that aren't relevant for you, but actually if it's inclusive for everyone, why not?
When we're removed from having the sex education class with other peers, it excludes us.
It's difficult because if you don't have that information, you can't know what is safe, know what is normal. You know, you have to emotionally prepare to be an adult, to be a sexual being. You have to go through that process all the time, from childhood into young adulthood and beyond. I think if you've never had that education, that information, that support, you're not going to go out and know how to have a relationship. You're not going to have those social skills and that information behind you. And if you're not worthy of sex education, how are you ever going to be worthy of sex?
And a big thank you to Amy, who sadly couldn't be with us today. So the importance of this particular session is about working together and taking the lead and the ideas and the needs from people like Lucy and Leah. And I'll now hand over to Lucy for the next section. Can you carry that?
Can you hear me? Yeah? Brilliant. It's always good to know that people can hear you. So I'm Lucy, this is my friend Leah. We've been part of the Open University Sexuality Alliance for quite a while now, but about a couple of years ago, I decided to set up a specific young people's group, which they called themselves the AdversiTeam. So they're adversity, but also they're a team, and that's how it came together. And that is a group of 16 young people with varying different life-limiting conditions, different needs, different sexual orientations, gender identities. It's trying to create a representative sample of young people today as they are and what they want to hear from resources, what they want to know from professionals, because a lot of young people were saying to us, we want to have stuff we can identify with. We want to see young people talking about this to relate to people. So that was really important to us. And obviously I'll talk a bit about kind of my experiences. For me, being part of this has been liberating. You know, being heard, being validated, someone actually talking to me about my sexual identity and my sexual needs is really important. For so long, they weren't a part of my life. So being part of this research and the resources and the other work has been a lot of validation that actually this is relevant to me and I do have a part of my life that I've actually not explored. And would you like to say a bit about yours?
Yeah, I think, can you hear me? Yeah, good. Obviously, as Lucy said, I've been part of the AdversiTeam, not quite as long as Lucy, I think she's epic. But for me it was, because I struggle through a lot of my sexuality, a lot through understanding sex and desires and needs and my disability. For me, this project means that I can give back. So what I struggled and fought to learn, I can ensure that other people don't have to go through that. I can ensure that there's resources out there so that people can easily access it. So, you know, for me, when Lucy asked, I kind of jumped at the chance, but it's not all about the sex, I promise.
It really isn't. It's a big part of all life, body image, you know, sexual needs, sexual information, identity, your place in the world. There's so much that relates to this topic. And people often ask us, you know, well, what do you get out of it? So I've got a video here of some of our young people talking about what they gain from being part of this resource and this work. Being part of the Open University Sexuality Alliance, for me, has given me a chance to build skills and build confidence in talking about this aspect of my life.
I've always known I was a sexual person, but I felt like I had to hide that in a lot of places due to my disability. And when I joined this group, it allowed me to become more free with that.
Sex and sexuality is a topic that I necessarily haven't explored myself as much as I probably should have. And I think it has enabled me to actually open those discussions and realise that I'm not the only one that hasn't really understood how sexuality, sex relationships can impact disabled people.
I think there's a general perception within the public that young people with complex disabilities, one, aren't interested in sex or that sex isn't relevant to them.
I think people being part of the Sexuality Alliance, it helps to break down those taboos that people might have.
So it's been really important to me that I've had my friends and, you know, people I know be able to share their stories and reclaim this part of their life and share their advice with other young people. You just learn to be okay with yourself and be okay with your limitations as well, which is really important when you've got a disability. So you think about what we give to this work, what we give to this research, but there's so much that we get in return, that we are validated, that we are heard, but also we can contribute something for other young people. A lot of young people say they want to make a difference for other young people that are coming up now through transition. So that's really important to all of us as young people. And I want to talk a bit, both of us, why this kind of research matters to us and what to bear in mind when you're co-producing research with young people. So for me, it's about, thinking about the level of commitment that you're expecting from young people. So our AdversiTeam, we're based out of a Facebook group. There's the option to kind of join in with bits you want to join in with, perhaps step back from bits that you're not interested in, or like when we've had health challenges, I've been poorly and Leah's stepped up for me, or Leah's been, a bit poorly and had life problems and I've had to step up. So there's this kind of camaraderie and effect where people can dip in and out as per their needs, as per their wishes. Some young people want to be a public face and talk about the public things. Other people want to be in the background, reviewing documents and feeding in their ideas. And it's making sure that flexibility is there for young people to decide what they want to do and how they want to be included. And that they know that if they're ill for 6 months, you're not going to be like, well, where are you? What are you doing? It's just like, okay, take that 6 months. We'll come back when you're ready. And that's so important to these young people. When I set up the group, it was, you can dip in and out as per your needs. If you need to take time off, take it out. Just don't even question it. And I think it's also the importance of deputising, as I mentioned. When I'm poorly, we needed people to step in for me. So I've got Leah. If me and Leah are both poorly, there's another young person called Chloe who will step in. And I think, Leah, you've been a big help to me through this.
Yeah, I think, it's all about us supporting each other in one big network. I mean, when Lucy asked me to come on, and we decided that I was going to be deputy, I thought I was getting the easy role, but that didn't happen. And between us, we've made sure that every member of the group knows that they can dip in and out. As Lucy said, whatever their strengths are, that's what we will play to. Whatever their weaknesses are, that's what we will support. And myself, I've had a lot of mental health issues over the past 12 months. I've had health scares. And it's been amazing to still feel like every time I've had a bit of input, I'm really respected for that. And when I haven't had input, there's a lot of messages asking how I am and a lot of support. Like, we are kind of one big family who are just trying to make things better.
And the other interesting thing we had is we did a filming day when we filmed these videos. And one of our young people came, and myself, Leah, Junior, Tom and Charlotte were very upfront with our needs. These are our needs. We'll bring our carers, we'll bring our nurses. And we're very upfront with that. And so the risk assessing for us was simple, because we gave you all the information you needed to know. One of our young people who's new to the group turned up, no, I don't have any needs, I'm completely independent, and then had a medical crisis while she was with us, and none of us knew her treatment plan. I knew a bit because I was her friend, but I didn't know enough. So that caused quite a lot. When she had that medical event, it was panic stations. We all had to kind of muddle in and work it out for ourselves. And I think risk assessing is really important, but actually there's a part of it for us as young people where we have to take responsibility for ourselves. But also you have to respect that we're at different places with our life-limiting conditions. So myself and Leah have been ill for such a long time and disabled for such a long time. It's just normal for us to be upfront. But for this young person, it was quite difficult. She was quite new to sharing her needs. And then obviously we had to do a lot of risk assessing and risk planning after that to make sure it wouldn't happen again. And for this research, we touched a bit on why this research matters, but the young people wanted resources that they could see young people that represented who they were, talking about things that were real to them. So we didn't want actors playing in the videos, we wanted real young people telling their stories and their experiences. And Leah and I both say we wanted to create the resources that we wanted 10, 20 years ago, that everyone needed as they were growing up, that they didn't have. So we're trying to make a stand and make sure that the young people coming up now have access to those resources. But you as professionals also have the information you need to support young people like us who were not expected to survive childhood, now suddenly are, and the world doesn't quite know what to do with it. What do you think?
I don't think they quite know what to do with us. Yeah, I think obviously, as Lucy was saying, you know, when I was coming to that age, you know, 10, 15 years ago, I'm old, you know, there was nothing out there. And like you said, these resources are driven by the young people. There's no one telling us, there's no agenda, you know, it's just genuine lives trying to make genuine changes. And like I said, no one's an actor, it's everyone's personal opinions. You know, I mean, I'm on one of these videos and I will hide while you watch it. But, you know, it's about, like you said, taking responsibility for ourselves and also taking responsibility for future generations.
Yeah. It's about co-production, so genuine co-production. Yeah. You know, we came together with the Alliance, the young people were the ones that said, we said to them all, what do you want? We've done the professionals booklets, we've done all this work, what do you want? And they just wanted resources that would help them, but they also wanted resources that could be used by professionals, so they didn't want it just for us. And that's what I feel we've created. And the young people, when you talk to them now and we shared the resources, are all happy with what was produced. And it's they produced what we promised them, and we produced what they wanted from these resources. So we'll talk a little bit about sexuality for me and Leah. So obviously we've talked about the work. Now we want to talk about why this matters to us personally. And so for me, I was quite poorly as a child, but I didn't have a diagnosis. So I went through life kind of living with a bit of help, needing more support than other young people. And as my peers and I got older, although intellectually I was in the top 5 people in my year, physically that gap was widening and widening. As they were becoming more independent, I was becoming more dependent. And that was really hard. And at 14, my life ground to a halt. And I became bedbound, multiple organ failure, and I wasn't expected at that point to reach my 18th birthday. But I think being isolated from my peers at 14, at that time when you're just gaining independence, you're testing the boundaries, you're experimenting with things, you know, you're finding out who you are. I missed all of that. And consequently, my life was so much about keeping me alive, keeping my body functioning, that we forgot about sexuality and intimacy. And my mum will hold up her hands, she's part of our work as well, and say she had the talks with my sister, my older sister, and it's not that she didn't think it was relevant to me, but because it was so far removed from our lives, we all forgot about it. And it wasn't until we got involved in this work that actually I realised there was this part of my life that I hadn't discovered and I didn't know, and it was part of reclaiming part of myself. I really felt like there was this part of my life that I'd forgotten and neglected, and now I had this freedom to explore it, to talk about what I wanted. You know, I do want to have a boyfriend in future. I do want to share my life with someone. I want to love and be loved. That's really important to me, to feel worthy. I think I said it in my video, you know, when you're fighting for support all the time, you start to internalise that you're somehow not worthy. And then suddenly we come into this work and people are saying, you know, you are worthy and you can have relationships. And it's like, actually, yeah, I can do this. What about you, Leah?
I mean, I was diagnosed just before my 2nd birthday. And roughly the same as Lucy. I was very intellectual, stringing sentences together at 2 years old. And then at 14, the same age, my life ground to a halt when I needed spinal surgery. And I ended up having near enough a full year off school. I ended up being in intensive care, needing 15 surgeries. And very much like Lucy, the whole aim was to keep me alive. It was to keep me going. It wasn't about my future. It was about then in that moment. And I think once I became well, once I became back healthy again, that had all gone. I'd missed that whole section of my life where my friends were going out and meeting boys and going on dates, and I didn't get to do any of that. And I think for me, that left me with a really bad body image. It left me with really bad confidence in myself. I didn't have any sex education classes at school. You know, I found it very hard to be intimate. If a boy was flirting with me, I just would not have a clue. I didn't know how to deal with it. And for me, my breaking point was when I turned 24. And I remember sitting with my geneticist, and I remember just breaking down into tears in the office with my geneticist and just saying, "Can I have sex?" And he looked at me and he went, "I don't know, can you?" And I was like, "I don't know, I'm so confused, I haven't spoke to anybody, I don't know what I'm doing." And then it wasn't long after that Lucy got in touch, and we started developing the group, and I started speaking to other people. I joined a group on Facebook, and now I'm happy to say that I'm in a very loving relationship and I'm engaged now to be married. And having my partner has completely changed the way I feel about myself. And that is because this group taught me that it's okay to have that. It's okay to feel desired and loved. And like you said, love and be loved. And, you know, that's what this group means to me.
And I think for us as well, we've got this added complication where we are surrounded by people, by healthcare professionals 24/7, yes. by PAs, by nurses. And interestingly, when I presented to my staff the guidance, and I had a conversation about sexuality, and I said I was going to start dating, I was going to join an online dating app. Haven't done it yet, but I promise I will. I'm going to set her up a profile. She will. And Molly, I'll have to set Molly up one as well. But the thing was, when I talked, I've got a team of ITU nurses and I've got a team of carers. And the really interesting was, when I presented it to my carers, they were very gung-ho, very for it, you know, we'll support you. The nurses were more hesitant, not because they didn't think it was relevant to me, but they were frightened about where they would stand. And for me, if I wanted to cuddle my boyfriend, you've got to hoist me up, work out all my bags and tubes and lines, then they're next door, I need to be able to summon help, you know, and I don't really want my mum or a nurse watching me dating someone. I love them dearly, but I really don't want to be watched. And it's about that safeguarding issue. Can I say to my nurse, go 5 minutes away, I will text you a certain emoji if I need help. I can do that. A lot of young people cannot summon help on their own, so you need to think, and they need to think about how they keep themselves safe and how we also support our staff, because much as they're there to support me, I'm there to support my staff as well. And I know Leah and her sister will share some bits in the video, but yeah. Yeah, what did you have?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for me, I had, you know, 24/7 care, PAs are there constantly. So between us, we've come up with, like you said, lots of reasonable risks, lots of safeguarding procedures about how me and my fiancé can have time to ourselves. You know, he's done bits of training and learned certain aspects so that everyone feels a little bit safer and confident leaving us for a few hours. And, you know, it's about working together between us all, but there will always be those people that are never happy about it, that see you as disabled and not a human. And, you know, it can cause those really awkward conversations, as you'll see in the video.
Leah doesn't want to watch.
No.
This is, a really interesting video about Leah and her sister talking about their experiences.
Hi, I'm Leah. I'm from Blackburn in Lancashire. I have SMA type 2, which is a neuromuscular condition, meaning that my body becomes extremely weak and I struggle to do everyday tasks.
Hi, I'm Chloe. I'm from Blackburn, Lancashire, and I am Leah's sister / PA.
Sorry, I'm okay. I'm good.
Get your drama skills back.
Dating. I've probably done more of this
recently
than you recently.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I tend to spread mine out. You tend to just
go all at once.
Yes, in one go.
Kind of like tub of Pringles. Once a pop, just can't stop. When, like, I don't know, I've always wondered when obviously I say to not having sex tonight, but I've got someone coming round. What's it like for you, like, because obviously I asked you to prepare things and that?
Sometimes you do think, sort of from a carer's perspective, like, should I, shouldn't I? But then when you take a step back and look at it differently, you are just like any other person. And you have the right to have those things, and just because you can't do them yourself, you know, as a carer you are there to assist you and help you, and it generally doesn't bother me. As for other people, I'm not so sure if they would feel as comfortable doing it.
Yeah, well, I have one PA who doesn't like the idea of me having fun sex. We had the situation around not wanting me to wear sexy underwear, so I kind of rebelled and threw all my underwear away and bought only Ann Summers kinky stuff so that she didn't really have a choice. With the sex toys, I kind of doubled my amount that I owned and then bought a box to put them in. But yeah, no, her face when she opened that drawer, oh my God, it was like...
You're doing an impression?
No. No. It was just that point where like I could feel my cheeks rising and she's just like, oh, what's this? And I was like, it's a vibrator. Like, and I was like, did she generally not know what it was, or was she trying to avoid it, or like? And she's like putting the underwear away, avoiding it completely, and then just shut the drawer dead slowly and just walked out of the room, and we didn't discuss it again. That person being uncomfortable makes me more uncomfortable, and I don't like that either. Yeah. It made me feel a little bit ashamed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it like made me feel ashamed, like I shouldn't have had those things. And it took me about 10 minutes to kind of get my confidence back and be like, well, hang on a minute, I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm not doing anything illegal, I'm doing what every girl my age does. Yeah, I felt a bit ashamed and a bit embarrassed, but then also a little bit angry. you have no right. You're coming into my home, into my personal space, going through my personal stuff. And I felt like, you kind of have no right to look at me like you're my mum, because you're not.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's what it felt like. It felt like I was being scolded off my mother a little bit. And I didn't like it, so I rebelled.
You can imagine us trying to edit these resources together and not laughing. It was really difficult. But those resources are what the young people wanted to hear, they wanted to see themselves represented. And one person that's on our alliance came back to us to a meeting recently, and she said that a young person had come to them and said, I want to talk about this issue. So she showed them the resources, and then when she next spoke to them, they said, oh, like that person said on that video. And it was just that identification that they are like someone else. There's someone else they can look to and have that resource and think, this is right for me. I'm just like them and they're doing it, so why shouldn't I? So that's really, really important that young people can feel that sense of identity and that sense of, them being represented in something that's true to them and true to their feelings. And also, we've been really, key in this process, in this work, making sure it's our resources, our needs are being met, but also that these were translatable not just to our needs, to professionals, so that our professionals can take those resources to young people and say, do you want to discuss this? Here are some resources. Because as professionals, you might feel very scared if someone talks to you, if you've got nothing to refer them on to, but if you've got this bank of resources that you can show to young people, that empowers you as professionals to know what to do. But it also empowers us to have the confidence to have those conversations and to say, I watched a video resource the other day, can I talk about this? Because it somehow becomes more normal. And sex is normal. Also, taking risks is actually allowable. We have to safeguard those risks. We have to make sure people are safe, but we are allowed to take risks and we're allowed to make mad decisions. But it's also about, us working with professionals, because it is a partnership. We as young people have to take responsibility. You kind of have to support us with our lives. And it's really important that we can live our lives fully without restriction, but also keeping everyone safe.
Yeah, and it wasn't easy making those videos. For a lot of us, it was very touchy subjects, and that's why, I tried to laugh about it as much as I could. But, like you said, sex is a normal part of life, intimacy is a normal part of life, and when you have nowhere to go and you feel like you're stuck, you suddenly regress very, very quickly. And, when we had that meeting and they were saying that someone had used the resources already and it helped, it made the entire project valid as far as I was concerned, just to help that one person and knowing that it's us helping us. And that was, really important.
And I think the important thing that I'm going to end on with is it's nothing about us without us. You can't do anything that's for us without involving us. And this project shows you that when you co-produce something, you produce something that meets the needs of not just one population, but all of us that are working together. Thank you.
So I just want to put out an enormous, big, massive thank you to Leah and to Lucy for their honesty and for their engagement with this work. And it's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be involved with this piece of work. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
I think we've learnt an enormous amount from and with them, and I'm sure that you've perhaps got questions and queries for them, and obviously we will have some time now for questions. I wanted to say that Maddie and Alison and Carrie around the ECHO project, and also Leah and Lucy are here all day, so if there are things you want to ask and query on a one-to-one, come and find us and talk to us about it. But I wondered whether there was any specific questions now from the floor.
This is a very quiet audience compared to what we used to, Luce.
We've got Amber will just bring the mic down to you.
Hi, it's Lizzie from Together for Short Lives. Hello.
Hi, Lizzie.
I just wondered if you could sort of capture, Leah and Lucy, sort of one message for young people, say, age 14, going through transition. What would be your message to them?
I think for me, it just would be that it's okay to have the feelings and thoughts that you are. Don't hide from it. Don't shy from it. Be brave and speak to somebody, because it will make it easier.
I think for me, this is relevant to you. It is a part of your life. Don't neglect that part of your life. Reclaim it and make sure that you assert yourself and assert your right to explore it.
Any other questions? Okay, I've got
one.
We know this type of presentation often stuns people to silence because you need to reflect and then the questions come later and we are around. But one thing I would just say
I think we've
about
got
the online...
I've got another question, Maddie.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. My name is Bridget at St Francis Hospice. Hi. The question, just building on the last one, what would you say, what would be the one thing that you would say to professionals that would really make a difference to you in your situation, both Lucy and Leah?
Do you want to go first?
I'd say talk about it with us, right from, those early stages. Talk to us about, what we're going to feel, what we're going to, want to explore, what our urges might be, and that actually all of it's normal. Open up that conversation right from childhood, because if young people grow up thinking that it's a normal conversation, they're never going to shy from having that with professionals. They will have the confidence to say, actually, today I want to talk about X topic, because you've kind of brought them up to think that that's normal.
And I think for me, it'd be a case of, I'm not asking you to know everything. I'm not asking you to know every single little detail. I'm asking you to have an open and frank conversation with me. I'm asking for us to learn together and discuss things together.
Maddie, do you want to?
I don't want to interrupt anyone from the floor, but just the online education resources, the ones that are here, will be reviewed regularly, and we're adding additional information. So, for example, we're going to be including a video around reproductive loss, and Lucy mentioned a couple called Chloe and Jordan, and these are the real individuals and they don't want to be anonymized, and they've given us consent to actually be included in these resources that can be viewed free all over the world, and you don't have to be a member of the OU to see them. But we are adding additional materials. So there are sort of top tips also about being LGBTQ, written by a lovely young man called young person called Jamie Hale, who talks about his experience of having a life-limiting condition and the issues of LGBTQ specific. So this is an ongoing, it's not a finale now. And actually, I just wanted to add for Lucy and Leah, the beauty of this is that people like Lucy, Leah, Amy, Junior, who you haven't met today, spoke so frankly and honestly and openly, and in a fun way. Why can't sex and sexuality be fun? And they make it respectful but fun. And as a group, the OU Sexuality Alliance and the AdversiTeam feel really privileged to work together collaboratively. But this is work that's taken time, and Lucy highlighted some of the risks that when you're filming, if people are ill, and even though we risk assess anywhere we go in advance, you never know what will happen on the day if someone's too unwell to attend. So it's not just about producing wonderful high-quality videos or materials. It's thinking holistically, as you do 24 hours a day in your work, about all the considerations of working collaboratively, but on an equal basis. Can I say something about next steps? Is that all right? Yeah. Yeah. Next steps.
Sorry, hi, can you all hear me? Just to also say, moving on from the OERs, which we'd really love you to have a look at them. In the next 12 months, we've talked to the young people again and also to their carers, and their next steps is to produce some literature for carers, predominantly either PAs or parents, paid carers, whatever role you may be in as a carer. Because what we found is a lot of the barriers come from people who will not be prepared or don't feel equipped to support the young people. So our next steps is around producing literature. Some of that will be around opening up conversations or not closing down conversations, which is obviously a real issue for young people who've maybe spent weeks plucking up the courage to ask a question to be told, well, there's not time for that, you've got to have your bath now, or whatever that might be. But also we're going to put some bits and pieces in about the law, because what we found talking to carers is actually the law is often a barrier because they're frightened of doing stuff for fear of getting into trouble. So there will be some little bits in that. There is already quite a big section in the guidance that we've already produced around the law, but the next steps will be a lot more bullet pointed. What I would say is if you're interested in supporting this, or if they've got particular issues that you think we should be addressing, there are some email addresses. Can you let us know? We are planning to do a bit of a focus group, but anybody that's within the audience who knows of issues that have been raised or that they're aware that young people have struggled with problems, then do get back to us and let us know about those. Thank you.
And if you want to join the focus group as well, we have some core members. We'd be delighted to hear from you.
Lovely. We've got another question.
Hi, very interesting talk. One thing I'd like to ask about is it's quite obvious looking at the people we've got in front of us in the conversation about sex is the lack of men. Is there a problem for men in your situation to discuss this? Are there differences in the issues? I just wondered if there's some.
I think we have got quite a lot of young men in our group. So, but I think they are some of them are a bit more behind the scenes. They don't want to be out there as much, I think. But also unfortunately, a lot of our young men couldn't make it on the day. But one of the videos we've got of the OERs is a married couple. And we've also got Junior, who you saw, you heard in one of the videos, and they're very open about it. I think with young men, I think they're frightened sometimes of revealing a weakness, that someone might see them on that resource and think they're weak. And a lot of young people felt that they were happy to talk about it in the group, but they didn't want their face presented on something. So I don't think there's necessarily a gender disparity. I just think it's the individuals in our group were very different in their approach. And it's just unfortunate that Junior couldn't be here today, because Junior is a really passionate advocate and is so open and so willing to talk about it. And often the young men are actually more upfront about things like masturbation than women are. And that's quite an interesting thing as well. There's another gender disparity there. We don't often talk about it as much as the young men do.
Thank you.
In the PhD, I've got permission just to add to your specific question. In the PhD research, we had 6 of the young adult participants were men, mainly with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, cystic fibrosis, or other rare life-limiting conditions. The common theme that emerged from that study really was, depending on the moment of diagnosis, so if you were a young man who had Duchenne's, and it was recognized or diagnosed when you were 3 or 4, how you dealt with your sexuality really had a significant impact. From those who we interviewed who are actually older, perhaps in their early teens, having been diagnosed with a life-limiting condition. So how they managed it, how they reacted to it, and how their carers supported them on that journey.
I was going to say a lot of it just really, really depended on how young people were supported and dealt with when they first started to talk about their sexuality. If they were very hush-hush, don't talk about it, it's not normal, then they were less likely to be more open. People like myself and Leah, we're quite outspoken, as you can tell. We're quite confident in our own abilities and our own needs. We are more at the front saying that. So I think it's also about the confidence level of the young people in their life, but also in that journey as a sexual being.
And I think obviously it's important to remember that everything that me and Lucy say is a unanimous group voice. So we are constantly in contact with all of our members, male, female, LGBTQ, everyone. And when we come to anything like that, whoever is representing the group as a whole. So we make sure that everybody's voice is heard.
I just wanted to pick up on your point about young men. And in my experience, recognising cultural difference, I worked with a lot of young men within my previous role prior to working for Hospice UK, and employed 2 very young youth workers who themselves had disabilities. And the engagement with young people and the dialogue around sex and relationships completely was transformed, because they had female and male workers to talk to, and they had a pick of who they wanted to have that conversation with. It might have been their support staff at school, it might have been somebody from their care team, but they knew that we were all open to that approach and having that conversation with them, and they picked who that person was that they had that conversation with. And I think it's just making sure that as the ladies have said, making sure that you're open and available, and we're not shy of having these conversations. We can't hide away anymore. And I just think, you know, if we give people the opportunity, those conversations will come. Okay.
So I think probably my closing comments to you are that if you're not already in a situation in your day-to-day work life where you have the fortunate opportunity to work with people who are within this age bracket, who are going through transition, I'm going to say to you, it's coming, because young people are living longer with complex needs and complex challenges to their day-to-day living. And so if you are sitting there thinking, I'm not sure that this is relevant for my service, it is completely relevant for your service because it's coming. I don't think it's particularly a subject we're very good at speaking about with our adults or with our elderly people that we look after, or the old either. So this is a starter point, this session at conference this year. As we move into the work for moving forward, we'll be looking at other sort of hot topics. I would ask that you raise your individual questions with the people who've been on the panel today. I would also ask if you're interested in the echoes that we will be setting up, the transition echoes. We will be looking at health and social care and education, psychology, development, how we support them in personal health budgets, the whole range within these echoes. But this was just an important platform to bring this amazing work that's been funded. Thank you to Together for Short Lives, who work with us, and also the OU. And again, thank you all for listening and for your attention. Thank you.